Hidden in Newark Bay, between Staten Island and New Jersey, lies an island whose shores are haunted by decaying wooden shipwrecks, towering structures slowly rotting into the water. Once a secure meeting place for Revolutionary War spies, Shooter's Island became a legendary shipbuilding hub, crafting everything from record-breaking schooners to a royal yacht for Germany's Kaiser Wilhelm II himself. Yet, despite its glorious past, the area is now reclaimed by nature, off limits to visitors, and home only to birds and memories. So, how did these massive ships end up abandoned around this forgotten island? And why does no one remember its remarkable story? Stay tuned to find out, as today we uncover the history of Shooter's Island. I'm your host, Ryan Sokash, and you're watching It's History. Before Shooter's Island became a shipbuilding hub, it was an isolated outpost, barely touched by human hands. Yet, even in its earliest days, this small landmass played an important role in the unfolding story of the region. Situated in Newark Bay, just off the north shore of Staten Island, Shooter's Island was uninhabited for centuries. And unlike most of the surrounding area, there's no recorded evidence that indigenous people from the Lenape Nation regularly occupied or used the land for settlements. Whether due to its small size, marshy terrain, or lack of fresh water, it remained an empty outcrop waiting for history to find it. That history arrived with the European colonists. By the 17th century, both the New York province and New Jersey province had begun expanding into the region, and Shooter's Island caught the attention of English settlers. The island's remote yet accessible location made it an ideal hunting ground, particularly for game birds. This earned it its unusual name, as early records describe it as being used for target practice and sport hunting. Colonists would sail out from Staten Island and New Jersey's shoreline to use this island as a makeshift hunting preserve. But while Shooter's Island's first role was as a pastime for the settlers, it would soon take on a more clandestine function. By the time of the American Revolutionary War, the island was no longer just a hunting ground. It had become a secret meeting point for espionage. Hidden in plain sight, Shooter's Island became an unlikely battleground in the war for American independence. Throughout the war, the Continental Army used Shooter's Island as a covert dead-drop location where messages, supplies, and intelligence were exchanged between American spies and military operatives. Due to its isolation and proximity to both British and American-controlled territories, the island was an ideal point for passing along strategic information. According to some accounts, George Washington himself is said to have visited Shooter's Island as a part of these covert operations. Although it should be noted that while no official documents confirm the full extent of its role in Revolutionary War espionage, proponents have argued that the island's geographic location and relative obscurity made it a valuable tactical resource in the fight for independence. Anyhow, as peace returned to the waters of Newark Bay, a new kind of industry took hold on the shores of Shooter Island, one that would shape its future as much as war had. Throughout the 19th century, Shooter's Island became a center for oyster harvesting, a booming industry across New York Harbor. The island was surrounded by rich oyster beds, and for decades, oystermen flocked to its shore to take advantage of this valuable resource. Oysters were a staple food source in the growing city, to the point that it helped to fuel and expand the local maritime economy. But as is often the case with natural resources, overharvesting became a serious issue. By the 1820s, the water around Staten Island and Newark Bay were severely depleted, and Shooter's Island was no exception. Plus, pollution from early industrialization combined with infrastructure expansion and continued harvesting led to the eventual collapse of New York's oyster industry. The final blow came in 1927, when the last oyster beds of New York City were officially off limits due to contamination and the declining population. Hence, by the mid-19th century, the once abundant oyster trade had dried up, and Shooter's Island was in need of another new identity. This time, it would be shipbuilding. By 1860, the first shipyard was established on Shooter's Island by David Decker. Though small in scale, this marked the beginning of an era that would transform the island from an isolated outpost into a hub of industrial shipbuilding. Other industries soon took note, including the Shooters Island Petroleum Refining and Storage Company, which also began operations on site. By 1898, the Townsend Downey Shipbuilding Company had also taken residence on the island, ushering in a period of global recognition. Specializing in high-end, custom-built vessels, Townsend Downey was about to put Shooters Island on the map, not just in New York, but across the Atlantic Ocean, as it prepared to launch a vessel fit for an emperor. In 1902, Shooters Island played host to a moment of international diplomacy when the Townsend Downey Company completed the Meteor, a luxury royal yacht built specifically for Kaiser Wilhelm II of Germany. The launch was attended by some of the most powerful figures of the time, including President Theodore Roosevelt and the Prince of Prussia. The ceremony, held in February, was a high-profile event, symbolizing American-German relations at the dawn of the 20th century. Adding to the historical significance here, Alice Roosevelt, the president's daughter, personally christened the vessel, reinforcing the bond between the two nations. This grand event was even captured by Thomas Edison, making it, at least according to most sources, one of the first newsreels ever recorded. Following the Meteor, the Townsend Downey Company continued producing remarkable vessels, including the Atlantic, a three-mast schooner that would go on to make history. In 1905, the Atlantic won a one-time Kaiser Cup, sailing from Sandy Hook, New Jersey, to the Lizard Peninsula in Cornwall, England. The record-breaking voyage cemented Shooters Island's reputation as a shipbuilding powerhouse. In fact, this Atlantic speed record stood unchanged for nearly 100 years when it was finally passed in celebration of the race's centennial anniversary. But just as quick as Townsend Downey brought glory to Shooters Island, financial troubles began to take their toll. By the mid-1900s, the shipyard's success began to unravel. Townsend Downey fell into receivership, and in 1905, ownership changed hands once again. This is when the Colonial Trust Company of New York City acquired the entire estate in auction, paying $516,000, a fraction of its $2 million valuation. Another major contender in the bidding was the Burley Dry Dock Company, which later became the Bethlehem Staten Island Shipyard, a key industrial site during World War II. While the company changed hands, the world was moving towards yet another transformation, and this time, it would be on a global scale. With the outbreak of World War I, the Standard Shipbuilding Company took control of Shooters Island in 1915. Though the United States had not yet entered the war, speculation was growing that America's involvement was inevitable. As expected, by 1917, the US formally joined the war effort, and Shooters Island was immediately mobilized for military production. The first wartime vessel, the USS Democracy, was completed before the end of 1917, setting the pace for increased production. By the end of the war, in November of 1918, 8 ships had been built at the yard, and by the time operations ceased in 1921, that number had risen to 32. A remarkable achievement for an island that had been nothing more than a hunting ground centuries earlier. As war production wound down, the infrastructure built during the Standard Shipbuilders' tenure remained intact. Shooters Island had seen its peak industrial period, with towering cranes, dry docks, and an active workforce crafting ships bound for global conflicts. But when the war ended, so too did the demand for these facilities. With peace came decline, and what was once a bustling shipyard began to wither. By the 1920s, the docks that once birthed record-breaking vessels and wartime fleets stood abandoned, left to decay in the waters of Newark Bay. Post-World War I, the demand for new ships plummeted, leading to the abandonment of vessels around the island. By the 1930s, Shooter Island had transformed into a maritime graveyard, with decaying hulls lining its shore. The surrounding waters became heavily polluted, rendering the area inhospitable to both humans and wildlife. Yet, nature has a remarkable way of reclaiming what was once hers. The passage of the Clean Water Act in 1972 marked another turning point, leading to significant improvements in water quality. By the late 1970s, Shooters Island began to emerge as a sanctuary for birds. Many species found refuge on the island. At its peak in 1995, Shooters Island supported approximately 500 pairs of mating birds. Recognizing its ecological significance, the New York City Department of Parks and Recreation designated Shooters Island as a bird sanctuary on March 3, 1994. Although the island's 43 acres are divided among New York and New Jersey, New York State secured management rights by compensating New Jersey with approximately $30,000, ensuring unified conservation efforts. So, who would have imagined that beneath the nesting grounds of a bird sanctuary lies such a rich maritime history, quietly connecting some of America's most significant events? Every place has a story to tell, and as we've discovered today, the true history is often hidden just beneath the surface. And with that, I thank you all for watching, subscribing, and supporting our Patreon page. Otherwise, until next time, I'm Ryan Socash, signing off.